So thank you all for being here tonight. We appreciate your time. Time is precious, and so we appreciate you spending tonight with us. We are here to talk about an art project for the 2028 Olympics. We, as West Hollywood, are not going to be a sports venue, but we know that people are going to come eat, sleep, and play here. And so we will be a culture hub during the 2028 Olympics. And so we are thinking about what an art project could be that would be representative of our community and something that we would want to share on the world stage. We're working with the team AEA Consulting, Laura Zucker and Bella Stenval, who are on the call today, and they'll be guiding us through a presentation. And we are considering an art project under a very specific thematic framework, which Laura and Bella will share. And we're really looking forward to your input. Your input is very valuable to this process and will be incorporated into our findings, which will then be shared with our Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission, ultimately resulting in an implementation plan, which will guide us over the next few years and then through the Olympics and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura and take it away.
Hi, thank you all again for being here. I'm so impressed with who is in the room. Um, so many really different, interesting sectors represented. Um, Please, we want this to be interactive. We want to answer your questions. So if you have any, please feel free to raise your hand or put them into chat, and we'll stop what we're doing. But I'm going to turn it over to Bella now to kind of give you the game plan for the session today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Just to get a quick look at our agenda, we ran through introductions. Again, if you haven't already, make sure to introduce yourself in the chat. I see one other person just joined us. We're just going to give you some background on what the project process has been thus far, introduce the thematic framework that this art project is going to live under, talk through some opportunities for us to align with you all as artists and residents and community members, and then also discuss the criteria for this project. And again, if you've just joined us, please introduce yourself in the chat so we know who's with us tonight. So just to talk you through what the project process has looked like so far, we began our work with the city and the arts division in October, and what that initially looked like was really thinking through what the vision, goals, and objectives were going to be for this art project for the 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. That involves some core stakeholder interviews with folks from the city and the arts division, as well as other municipal leaders, folks from regional and state arts leadership, and just getting a sense of, who could the partners be within tourism in West Hollywood, across different kinds of sectors, and really getting a sense of, okay, what is this conceptual framework that this whole project could live under that we'll talk to you about today. And then in November, we transitioned to our community engagement, which we are concluding with this session, actually. And I think we have one more meeting with the Sunset Strip bid. But we have been doing artist-led constituent engagement, which has been led by Pickle, who's the drag laureate of West Hollywood, as some of you know, as well as Jen, who's the poet laureate, Ari DeSano, who did a wonderful performance and activation at Winter Wonderland this past weekend. We've had conversations like this one with other artists and arts organizations last weekend at Farmers Market at Plummer Park, all different kinds of in-person ways of talking to folks to get their feedback, and then also using Engage WeHo, which I will remind you here that there is engage.weho.org/olympicsart, and it is another way to give us feedback on this process. If you look at the bottom here, there's that community engagement tab. There's a set of questions there that you can answer just like a survey. So if there are folks in your community or your network that you think you would really like to pass this along to, we would love as many voices as possible as part of this process. And then I'll just back up a little bit. So after we conclude this community engagement part, we will be looking ahead towards an implementation plan. So what are the nuts and bolts of how this actually is going to happen for the Olympics in 2028?
Okay. So during this process, the county and the city were also holding 10 listening sessions. Anybody here raise your hand, attend any of those sessions? And if you're not on camera, please feel free to come on camera because we're going to be seeing each other and talking together. So I don't see anybody on my screen who attended. Heidi, you must have attended. No. Okay. And Heidi introduced herself, but she's also she didn't say she's a choreographer extraordinaire. So we have a good wide discipline representation here. Um, and what we've generally heard from everyone, and if you hit your space bar, Bella, for a cohesive idea, right? A regional arts project that's a little bit of everything for everybody isn't going to be particularly exciting for either artists, arts organizations, visitors coming, or even locals to engage in. So this conceptual framework was super important. And we're going to be talking about what our conceptual framework is that was adopted, as Mito knows, by the Arts and Culture Commission of the City of West Hollywood back in October. Next. It needs to be accessible for artists, for organizations of all sizes, and not only for nonprofits potentially, but for all creative businesses, right, to enter into this. Next. Of course, everyone wants to know where the funding's coming from. And one of the things that we've come to realize is how important the funding from the municipalities, including WeHo, are going to be because they are the current holders of arts funds and have programs that can be utilized to focus on this purpose. We do know from our conversation with LA 28 folks that so far they are saying that LA 28 does not intend to provide any resources, which makes the importance of the municipalities, well, even more important. And then the other thing that people wanted was, why didn't we do this last year? We are so feeling behind the 8 ball, but we're doing it now is the good news, and we're barreling along. Okay, next. So in thinking about what a conceptual framework that would meet all of these needs, we really started thinking about the Olympics, what it means, the fact that the original Olympics stopped in 400 AD, that the guy in France, Pierre Coubertin, reinvented it in 1896, that everything about the current Olympics is invented as a tradition, and reinvented continually. The parameters keep changing. Many of you may know that that theme you kept hearing around the Paris Olympics was written by John Williams for the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. We started thinking about the strong work that artists and arts organizations are constantly doing in terms of inventing tradition, and how Los Angeles has led the way on it, and how WeHo in particular has led on this issue, because of course it's the city that invented itself 40 years ago. You all know the many things that we've invented, from the hula hoop to Cobb salad. And so there's tremendous interest and excitement about pursuing this as a conceptual framework. And in the first part of our meeting, we want to hear from you, your thoughts about this, and how you see potentially your work aligning or contributing to this as a thematic framework. And we also are interested in taking any questions you have about the parameters of what we're thinking at this point, or how we're thinking about the planning. So I'm going to open it up because this is meant for discussion with you all. Stunned into silence.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go.
Sorry, just I'm a bit worried since I'm using a Bluetooth.
Yes, we're going to take
Um,
notes as people are talking because we want to make sure we capture everything.
Okay. So I want to talk about something that I've been thinking about since hearing about this project. So I lived in WeHo for about 2 years, but I'm not a native to Los Angeles. So I was just wondering if there's gonna be an emphasis on basically kind of fostering more of the native born talent there, or is it are you guys also open to basically people who come from other places and made their home in WeHo and Los Angeles in general? Because
Excuse
I know
me,
there's a bit.
hasn't everyone in Los Angeles come from somewhere else? Does anyone actually know someone? Well, there are. Occasionally we come across somebody who was born in Los Angeles, but it's so rare. It's like finding, you know, a pearl in an oyster. We are an incredibly diverse community in WeHo and in Los Angeles writ large. And almost everywhere one has come from someplace else, if not within the United States, from other countries. We have ginormous populations from other countries, and in WeHo particular, enormous Russian immigrant communities. So this is absolutely meant to be inclusive.
Oh, and that's what I wanted to bring up too, because I feel like one concept that should be really explored is basically constant transformation. Because while we have tradition, we also have transformation within those traditions. So that's something I always think about when I think about Los Angeles and WeHo is that you have tradition, but you also still have innovation. So it's like they work alongside, not just one is better than the other.
Totally, totally. And when you also think about inventing traditions, you think about it in terms of your family every time you're celebrating something the same way, or how does it change? How does it morph? How are you adapting it to current conditions? But you also think about it in your larger group of friends, in the groups that you identify with, and in our larger communities and structures, right? So it goes all the way from the very personal to the civic in many ways. But those were great points. Other thoughts?
Just because of the nature, hi, it's Laura Brody, of what I do, I'm wondering if we would like to focus on something for the Paralympics, because I'm specifically working with disability arts. And are you looking for a project that incorporates both things?
I think it's super important. So let's talk about a couple of things in terms of time frame. And you should also know that my colleague Bella just, have you completed actually the project for the NEA?
Yes, it's not published yet, but we just completed a dance and disability field scan for the National Endowment of the Arts. And though it's very specific to dance, the takeaways actually feel applicable across all arts disciplines. So that's coming out later this year.
And this has come up very, very often. And I'd like to spend another couple of minutes on it because it's so important. You know, the Paralympics used to be wildly separated from the regular Olympics in terms of the time frame. And it wasn't until Tokyo that they were brought into close proximity to each other. But Tokyo was during COVID, so I don't think, you know, it really kind of penetrated the consciousness of people. I think Paris was really the first time where the Paralympics, because it was so closely aligned with the Olympics, there was only 3 weeks in between. And to my knowledge, I think it was the first time that NBC actually provided televised coverage of it. So I think there was a lot more interest and involvement and awareness of it. In LA, we've got a really interesting opportunity because there's only 2 weeks between the regular Olympics and the Paralympics. So they are in very close proximity. And in terms of time frame for projects, as we start moving into an implementation plan, we're thinking that there are things that are going to have to go all the way from the beginning pre-Olympics to post-Olympics. Maybe these are temporary art projects, installations that can stay up during those whole times, right? But that 2 weeks in between the two major Olympic events are going to be amazing opportunities for real tent poles and excitements while the sport people are catching their breath. And if we do it right, maybe this is an opportunity to get the regular Olympic folks to stay over longer, experience some of the Paralympics, some of the Paralympic folks to come earlier and experience LA. And so being welcoming and thoughtful about everything having to do with the Paralympics is going to be, I think, of paramount importance. Laura, anything else on that, or does that kind of?
No, it covers that, and it's always, as always, a question of accessibility in all of the ways. And so what sorts of things Because what I would love to see, if it is possible, is making both of the events as accessible as possible in as many ways as possible.
And all of the cultural events, right?
Yes.
Not dividing
Yep,
them.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Other thoughts?
Hi there, if I may jump in.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say I'm loving this conversation from start to finish. This is such a pleasure to be included in this. My close colleague Caroline invited me to the meeting on Friday. I wasn't able to attend that one, and I didn't know how much value I could bring. And she texted me after, and she was like, "You have to join the next one. I feel like this is going to be a perfect blend for you." I'm still kind of in listening mode, but there are two things that I would love to voice, if I may. One is one of the really special elements of the Paris Olympics, especially in the opening ceremony and in the art that they had across the city, was that it really leaned into all aspects of the French culture. And I found that even some of it was a little bit more provocative or a little bit more eye-opening than the average, very palatable, universal representation of culture may be. But that's really what art is meant to do. And so just thinking about how that pairs with West Hollywood and really leaning into the inclusivity and the creativity of our city, if it's not as, um, beiged out to just to satisfy everyone, I think that's kind of a great opportunity for us to lean into and see where that edge is. And the second thing too, um, my great grandfather and my family lived in West Hollywood well before it was West Hollywood, and he was a group of asylum seekers from Eastern Europe who were all artists. And I think as they've aged, their stories have been a little bit more behind closed doors than previously when there was a lot bigger of a community base. But there is still a very lively one. And I've noticed too, as our demographics have shifted, we have such an influx of Hispanic speakers and some Chicano culture that has bared over. And it'd be really interesting to see a representation of the past leaning into the future and where this all lives within our city limits, so it speaks. And also, our city limits, we are 1.9 square miles. They are very close to our neighboring West Beverly Hills, Hollywood, etc. It may be interesting to see like how we can to really foster a positive tourist experience where they understand what West Hollywood stands for in relation to our neighbors as well. That was a
Okay.
lot out there.
You brought up three really
Okay.
great important points. First of all, taking risks, right? Pushing the boundaries. If we don't do that as artists, to your point, what is the point? If we don't fail some of the time, it means we're not taking enough risks, right? So giving ourselves permission to do that, that's really come up as a strong point. We've heard from others as well. I think one of the interesting things about the founding of WeHo was that it was really a coalition of LGBTQ folks and seniors who made it happen. So the multi-generational aspects could be, I think, really important to explore. And let's not forget our young folks and people with kids and integrating into curriculum in the schools potentially. I mean, there's the whole multi-generational, right, aspects of this. And then you brought up the neighboring municipalities. And just so you're aware, we've been having conversations not only with the city of LA. So the cities that have Olympic venues, right? Well, so the Olympics have been awarded to the city of LA, right? But they're being produced by LA 28, the nonprofit. The city of LA has Olympic venues, but so does Pasadena, Inglewood, Long Beach, and maybe Santa Monica. They're deciding if they're going to have the beach events, right? So it's regional in terms of facilities. So Pride House has been officially handed off from the Paris Olympics to WeHo and determining where Pride House is going to be situated and how what that's going to be is going to be an important part of this. But obviously, working with our municipalities is going to be critically important. So we've been meeting not only with the city of LA, but with the folks from the cities of Beverly Hills, Culver City, Santa Monica, Long Beach, Pasadena, Glendale, to look and see where there's synergies. So for instance, one idea that's come up is Santa Monica has this great temporary art program along Santa Monica Boulevard. Well, why not run that all the way from downtown to the beach through multiple cities, right? Collaborating together. I think the cities are really excited about this thematic framework of inventing tradition and are seeing possibilities for themselves to do it through their own particular lens. I see Mito has his hands up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again. It's Mito.
Sorry, Mito. I'm so
that's okay.
sorry.
I'm the
So
Arts and
sorry.
Cultural Affairs Commissioner for the city. What I would like to say or echo is I love what Sam said. And I think that there is, as the city of West Hollywood, we are a world-class city deserving of world-class art. And being that Pride House will be coming to West Hollywood and the Olympics are coming to LA, how we can go ahead and tie in that sort of notion of world-class art and what does that look like. Obviously, we were talking about generational, we were talking about the amount of history that's here in not only Los Angeles, but in West Hollywood. Obviously, what we saw in Paris was them utilizing their venue spaces like the Eiffel Tower as spaces that they could utilize and embrace with art. So I would like to go ahead and just sort of throw that on the table as it being, a place and a space where we can have and hold world-class performances that will go ahead and stand and withstand the test of time. And everyone just really talking about how impactful LA 28 as an Olympic event was, also embracing art within the city of LA and West Hollywood.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts? Isn't it great when an arts and culture commissioner wants to lean into risk?
I had one question, or are we gonna bring up any themes or any reference to the current wildfires when it comes to any art projects or anything relating, or any basically projects for this Olympics? Like, are we gonna bring up basically, yeah, the fire? Because I was just thinking about how these fires brought LA and kind of like the world for a moment together to help out these families and victims. And I was wondering if we were going to just pay some type of tribute to that in any projects, or is that something that's being considered?
Well, of course, the Olympics are 3.5 years from now, 2028. I hope we won't have any other disasters between now and then, but it's really hard right now, I think, to predict where we're going to be in relation to that. I do know that, the Palisades was in the jurisdiction of the city of LA, and Altadena is an unincorporated area within the jurisdiction of the county. And I hope that they're going to be giving particular thought, the county particularly, about how they're going to activate the unincorporated areas. So I think we need to get a little bit closer to see what happens between now and then. It's a long ways off. But certainly it's certainly top of mind now.
Yeah, I just bring it up because I was wondering too, like themes such as LA's, a city that's always constantly like a phoenix, is like it's always being reborn. And I think people who come here who have always lived here too, like they're always going through such change. So I just wanted to bring the idea of like basically change and like what's that word? Perseverance? Like when you like go
That's a
through.
great word.
So
I love
I
that.
just wanted I
Yeah,
just thought those themes would be interesting to bring up because I feel like I feel it reflects the people of LA,
yeah,
especially in WeHo too. That WeHo like stood the test of time. That's still there in the center.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I have a few thoughts, and admittedly, I'm new to leading into this brainstorm. I spend a lot of time thinking about just how to keep our theater running day to day. So this is quite the pivot to think years in advance. One thought is, content aside, I'm really interested in what sort of infrastructure and process, what sort of support we can create for each other across the city to amplify all of our content. We could certainly all produce events at the same time, but what infrastructure can be created to amplify that? Is there a festival style citywide pass? Is there a Today Tick style, really user-friendly platform where no one actually needs to go to different websites? They just go to one spot and they have a sort of key to arts and culture in the city. This is not a fun topic, but I'm thinking a lot about security, recognizing we'll have the same government when the Olympics are here, and looking at the significant impact on how we think about protecting our artists and our audiences now, then opening our doors literally to the world. I think about how we can join forces to keep each other safe. And then I'm also wondering, I'm not a sports person at all, but I wonder what sort of engagement or relationship can we have with LGBTQ athletes? How can we connect with them and use their platform to amplify the work we're doing as queer artists and community members? So I'll pause there, but I really appreciate the invitation to start marinating on this.
These are all great things to marinate on. Well, going back to your first point, because I think it's a huge one, marketing communications is going to be very, very important. I think this is, in fact, probably the key role that LA 28 can play. If they want to play one across the entire region, this is the one. And I think from talking to the folks who are considering their plan for the Cultural Olympiad, I think they're thinking in the same direction. That being said, WeHo has a couple of big advantages. It has Visit WeHo, which we've talked to, and they're going to be an important platform for aggregating whatever happens and getting that word out, right? Which is going to be very important and something that the hospitality community is going to want, because they're going to want heads in beds, which did not quite happen in Paris, interestingly enough. But I think WeHo's well positioned to take to optimize visitorship because of its central location. Thanks, Laura. I see your hand. And we have 17 kind of visitor convention communication organizations within the county. So hopefully they can all get together and get their act together. And then you also have, a pretty terrific internal comms system in WeHo. I've been impressed compared to other municipalities that I've been in, and I live in LA, which has no communications with me of any kind, usually, with the level of communications for WeHo. So I think your point is important, and it needs to be, Bella, a whole section of the implementation plan that we talk about. Security, yeah. I think we need to think about that, and certainly think about it in terms of cultural events and viability. And I won't say more there because I'm not an expert on security. We need to think about it for sure. And then, yes, LGBTQ athletes and artists. And, someone just wrote this great book, and the title is escaping me, about the whole introduction of an acknowledgement of trans artists, athletes, I mean, in the Olympics, which goes back apparently to the Munich Olympics, where they started to first make a distinction about trans athletes. So there's a lot of interesting history there too, to unpack. So yes, it's a tremendous amount. Thank you for all three of those. Laura.
This is just sort of a thematic thing, and this is going back to, I'm sorry, who's talking about the wildfires. But specifically, you're talking about the Olympic flame and keeping the Olympic flame alive, and the idea of the phoenix rising in transformation. That's a good overall theme
Interesting. Yes. And is an interesting tradition in and of itself, isn't it? The torch. Oh, but thank you for putting the book that I mentioned about the other Olympians. It just came out recently. It was a recommended book from the New Yorker. If you haven't seen it. Okay, other thoughts, ideas, things we should be thinking about. This is so helpful for us. I can't tell you. Nothing? Everyone has said what they want to say?
No,
Oh, sorry. Oh, you go first. Sorry.
Oh, it's just a question, and apologies if you went over this on the Friday meeting, but what are what will be the types of art? And has that been determined? And will there be performances? And how many? I'm just curious.
Okay, so absolutely all disciplines. And you'll see when we get into the criteria that one of the things that we're going to be discussing is the importance of collaboration, as well as the potential for cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, cross-sector work. You know, when you're inventing traditions, the sky's the limit here on the mashup, right? This is why we want artists and organizations to be putting what the projects are forward. We want your imaginative work, and we'll talk about the criteria for including it within the framework. So there's no set number of anything yet.
Exciting to hear. Thank you.
Mito.
Thanks, Laura. Real quick, do we know where Pride House is going to be stationed within the city? Is that still up for discussion? Do we have a venue space?
Becca?
We don't know exactly where it will be, and it's a conversation that's ongoing between Pride House and the city.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have any discussions with like any local like LGBTQ Olympic athletes, or well, kind of that to kind of get their perspective and kind of get their take on what they experienced art in other places when they gone to do the Olympics somewhere else, so to kind of get their perspective of how they've interacted with either the art when they traveled or done the Olympics before, and I feel like that could be like some good insight. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
I think it could, and I think it would be interesting to do as for kind of the first stage of the implementation phase. What we do know is that the city of West Hollywood sent a sizable delegation to Paris that experienced both the Olympics and the Paralympics and the cultural elements, along with a whole lot of other folks from across the county, and came back with some very interesting insights. A couple of them that I was struck by, one was the importance of the viewing hubs. You may know that Paris had a viewing hub in every arrondissement, you know, with a big jumbotron where people could gather together, watch. There was food elements, there were cultural elements associated with it. I have to imagine that that's going to happen in most of the municipalities and in a lot of the neighborhoods in LA and certainly in WeHo. So I think that was a big takeaway. The other thing that we heard from people was just the pop-up events, the coming upon events, the unexpectedness, right? The kind of events and things that were woven into street life and just moving from one place to another were exciting to the visitors in Paris.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
This is Mito. I have a thought, or yeah, a question maybe for either Laura or Becca. But have we thought of, because I know that we were talking about viewing hubs like they did in Paris. I would say we have viewing hubs on the Sunset Strip with our billboards, which are these giant digital billboards on the Sunset Strip. Is that something that we've considered, or do we have to approach someone, maybe Orange Barrel, to see what kind of a partnership can be created?
No ideas are bad ideas at this point. We're taking them all, and then we figure out what can actually be implemented.
But I think what's also important about what you said is we are very actively thinking about, particularly as we move into this implementation plan, What are the assets that WeHo have that can be used toward this? And the digital billboard program on the Sunset Strip is a huge asset that's growing, right? And the intention is to go from, there's a few big, important digital billboards right now, but the intention is to grow to 28 billboards by 2028, all of which have designated art space already built in. And so that obviously has to be a major element, right? Any other thoughts, comments?
Yes.
Yeah, Heidi.
I
Oh,
don't
and
know.
then Sam.
Go ahead. Me? I don't know.
Heidi.
I only know how to raise my hand physically, so sorry. Um, and I just came to listen, but I want to say a couple of things. I love the idea of inventing traditions. I think that's a wonderful thematic framework, but I also was playing with the idea of creative living as sort of a as an idea, present day idea of creative living and how we might express that in everyday acts as sources of inspiration. And I wanted to say that during COVID, I walked Pico from the beach to downtown. And I love the idea of Santa Monica, using Santa Monica Boulevard. I think that's genius. And there's many ways in which you can use that, as a timeline, as different performances, as different installations. I think that, you should have a whole meeting and group to really talk about Santa Monica Boulevard. I'm very inspired by that idea. And the digital projections, I think, and billboards, I think could be very impactful. So, and I think we should think about, because it is sports, obviously, and uses our bodies and things like endurance and health and well-being, are themes that we should really be considering and taking into account as we think about art projects and performances and so on. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Great. Very, very helpful. Thank you. Sam.
Yeah, I'm echoing Heidi and Mito for the digital billboards. I think that'd be an excellent use of an existing resource. One other thing that I really want to emphasize, and I've shared this with the city council members as well, but in the light of viewing hubs, utilizing our parks and setting up the screens like we have for the family movie nights so that we have a third space to be able to view all together. One pivot from that too is echoing what Heidi said about creative living. Palmer Park is utilized every day by our Eastern European community, and it's done and so in like a very playing chess, playing with children, joining as like older congregants of our community, joining together. I think that could be a really nice extension of a daily activity that is already taking place and could be emphasized in an artistic way through viewing for the Olympics too.
Great. Thank you. Jonathan.
I have a couple in draft thoughts. One is I'm realizing that I'm receiving this not only as an arts producer, but as a venue owner. So I'm thinking about, well, how can the center, because we're the center, invest our capacity not just in creating artistic content, but invest our capacity in making our spaces more easily accessible to artists and other people in these calls. So I'm curious to think creative. I'd love to think creatively with the city about how we can making available our stages a lighter lift for more and more people. Another thought, this is very high level, but I can't help but really lean into the systems and structure piece of it and wonder how we can build relationships with hotels and concierge staffs, how we can build relationship with Airbnb, how we can build relationship with Yelp and restaurants. And in a silly, playful way, I'm reflecting on my experience doing excursions on cruises. And I wonder, how can we bundle these meet the city deep dive experiences with other folks who would love to find these audiences so that the invitation is even that much more attractive.
Yeah, so both great points. We've met with the chamber. We met with the design district bid, and I think as Bella mentioned, we're going to be meeting with the Sunset Strip bid, and we have gotten a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from the hoteliers and the culinary folks, and even from people running hair salons who all see that they could enter into this and partner with artists and also do things on their own so that there's an opportunity to make this really immersive across all the businesses in WeHo, I think, and beyond, right, is the objective. Really glad you mentioned your venue. I know I saw Becca nodding during that because WeHo does not have many venues of its own. And so it's going to need partnerships with folks for sure. You know, we have two people from Prism Comics who have not spoken up. I was wondering if either of you had any thoughts.
Well, we Tara specifically published one book and is publishing another book about LGBTQ sports. And so, I mean, we were curious because I wasn't able to come to the Friday meeting. Are there specific plans for events, art installations, dance? I mean, is there a framework, or are you looking for projects right now? Getting up to speed on what the plans are.
Okay, so right now we're creating the framework. All of this input that you're giving us today is helping us figure out what's going to be most important to be thinking about. We're going to segue pretty soon to the next part of our conversation, which is around the criteria. Then we're going to work a implementation plan with the city of West Hollywood. It may include some specifics like the digital billboard program that we've been talking about, but it will be porous so that artists and arts organizations are able to propose projects. What we're envisioning now is that there will potentially be some grant money because WeHo has a terrific grant program that could be used to fund projects, but that there'll also be an opportunity, and this is what they did in Paris, for people to propose projects to be part of it without funding necessarily that they want to do, but that would have to meet the same criteria so that it will be cohesive in terms of Jonathan's good point about how are we going to market this and communicate about it so that it really, you know, the sum is greater than the parts, but that there will be a lot of entry points for people like Prism Comics to propose things. And I'm going to recognize Mito, and then we're going to move to the next part of the agenda.
Cool, thank you. I know that we've been talking about in this conversation collaborations with other venue spaces, being that as a city, we don't have very many venue spaces. But I remember years ago, and this was a really amazing immersive dance installation that Heidi did at Emser Tile, where you did the projections and you were using the stairwells with the dancers and everything. I still till this day think about that performance because it was such a well done, and the fact that you utilized Emser Tile Building to put that together was just incredible. So from a collaboration standpoint, I thought it was really, really well done.
And, you know, there's empty storefronts, there's underutilized spaces. We need to be thinking about all of these things. Well, this was a great conversation. You can if you continue to have a burning thought, don't hesitate to put it into the chat. But we're going to move to the next part of the agenda. Bella, who's operating on multiple levels at once. She's driving whiteboards and PowerPoints. She's going to take us through some of the proposed criteria.
Thanks, Laura. So the first criteria that probably comes to mind for all of us is thematic alignment. If this project is not thematically aligned, then it's probably not the right place for this. And by the way, when we're talking about criteria, this isn't necessarily solely for a grant application. This is criteria that we're thinking about for, should someone be involved in this process? Should this project be part of this overarching theme? But eventually will be folded in when we're thinking about, okay, what does grant making look like? But we're thinking about this in more of a broad sense. Artist qualifications and experience. This is one that actually we spent a good amount of time talking about in our other sessions, namely because we were discussing, okay, what does it mean to be qualified and experienced as an artist? In our working definition, part of that is what is the artist's depth of connection to West Hollywood? More so than, what was their schooling or academic training. We all know that as an artist, qualifications and experience can look really different depending on who you are and what your practice is. So thinking about a more holistic definition of this. Long-term legacy. So thinking about, is this a project that will it mean that later on post-Olympics, folks will either still be returning to it in their mind's eye as something that was really impactful? Is it something that feels sort of semi-permanent? What is the way that we're thinking about the long-term legacy and impact of this project? Community engagement and accessibility. When we talk about community engagement, that means, how is the community being pulled into the actual making of this project? Is the process driven by community engagement? Is it something that is accessible, not just in terms of, physical accessibility, but is it accessible in terms of price point? Is it accessible in terms of readability? Is it accessible for our, all different kinds of age groups as well as folks across different abilities? So that's what we're thinking about in terms of community engagement and accessibility. Approach is one that ended up being a combination of two other criteria as a result of some of our earlier conversations. So when we're thinking about approach, we are thinking about, is this a project that you've been doing over and over and over again that you're just hoping can get thrown into an Olympic framework for this art project? Or is this something that you really customized and thought about specific to this arts project for the Olympic and Paralympic Games? Have you considered the site and the, cultural, social history of the site? Is it innovative and experimental and risk-taking just in its approach artistically and creatively? Those are some of the things that we're thinking about. Diversity, this is really with all meanings of the word. So diversity in terms of identity across race, gender identity, ethnicity, age, disabled versus, non-disabled. Also thinking about discipline. So do we have a diversity of disciplines being represented? And also a diversity of audiences this is intended for. Is this just for kids? Is it just for 21 and up? Or is it something that can really be accessed by a diverse group? Sustainability, this one's pretty straightforward. Does it consider sustainability? Is it in line with the climate action plan? And then scale. So are all of these projects going to be coming from large established arts institutions and organizations? Or are we focusing more on emerging artists and more mid-sized organizations? Just thinking about the scale of who is creating this project and making sure that it feels equitable across those groups. And then lastly, partnership and collaboration. Is this a project that is considering local partnerships with local organizations, whether that's across different arts organizations coming together to be a part of something such as like a festival? Or is this something that involves collaborations across disciplines or even collaborations across sectors? So thinking about arts and well-being, arts and sustainability, all of those arts X something else. And then also thinking about international collaboration. So does this include a partnership with, if we're talking about dance, does this include a partnership or collaboration with another country? As we think about, how do you combine the hyperlocal West Hollywood context with the international folks that are coming in? So these are our possible criteria, and we say possible criteria for consideration because part of our conversations with folks has been really helping figure out what is missing. So I guess our question for you all is what feels like it's missing from this criteria? And also, are there parts of this criteria that we need to sort of define together or refine together? And feel free to unmute or raise a hand. Laura, anything you want to add about how this criteria will be used?
No, everyone is stunned into processing at the moment. But after we have some discussion about this, so you should know from where we started on Friday morning, Sam, I don't know if your friend told you, to where we went to the session on Friday afternoon, this criteria has changed. And it could very well change again based on this discussion. So this is real input. And then once we have the discussion and get your thoughts, we were hoping to do a poll, but we couldn't get it to work because Zoom. So we're going to ask you to take what you feel are your top 3 criteria that you feel are the most important and vote on it via chat. And Bella, who has a brain faster than a calculator, will somehow get us a sense of where the results are so that we can kind of unpack that. That's part of what we're doing here. But before we vote, just want to make sure everyone is clear about what are we voting on? Are we missing something? Did we forget something critically important? Is there something we should be saying differently?
I'll just offer a reaction.
Yeah, please.
I think this may all be absolutely perfect, but I'll be vulnerable and say that I pause and question thematic alignment. I can appreciate why, and I would feel far more inspired and supported by an invitation rather than a theme. And if the invitation were, you know, I'm going to say something really stupid, but like, what is the story you want to share with the world or something, right? I think that because I curate seasons all year long, and I think that if you really work on thematic alignment, that is possible, but it also there's an interesting tension there with diversity, and I think it could be unintentionally limiting. So I'll just offer that thought as opposed to a very wide sort of dance floor to play in. And then I'll just offer, not quite in reaction, well, I guess in reaction to sustainability, another silly thought is not knowing about how successful past initiatives like this have been around the world. I can't help but wonder, is this a good time to put on a play? Are we oversaturating the city, and are we creating a competition? I think the answer is no, but it would be, I think, irresponsible of me to not pause and also ask, is impressive and exciting to put forth our calling card, and how do we ensure sustainability for our work?
Okay. So first of all, your first point is basically, it's like you put a stake through my heart.
Oh,
I just
no.
I just want to share that.
Oh.
Because I do believe that the thematic framework that we're talking about, inventing traditions, is very broad and allows for everyone's stories to be told. And the feedback that we've gotten so far on it has been overwhelmingly positive. So I feel confident that it will not restrict people in terms of narrowing the scope, that it will I feel confident it will fire people's imaginations and broaden their thinking potentially. But
May I offer? Yes, and my reaction to the criteria is offered separate from a appreciating the actual theme. So that theme, I think, as a concept, I bristle at thematic alignment. I like to curate with kind of without curation, but I think our theme does leave a lot of flexibility.
Thank you. Okay.
So
Whew.
take that steak
Okay,
right back
I'm
out.
taking the steak out of my heart. Thank goodness it didn't have a, I don't know, what is the thing they put on the end when they're killing the vampire? It didn't, okay, I'm fine. Um, is this the right time to be doing art? Is that your second question, really?
Well, I think it's always the right time to do art. I just, it's, we intentionally space out our performances and leave a lot of air in between them to ensure we have an audience. We also pay a lot of attention to what else is happening around town. I think this abundance of new friends in the city will lead to an abundance of new ticket sales. But I also don't know that. That's not based in data. I also wonder, is there the possibility of oversaturating folks with the choice of 500 events, and we're actually we're having a harder time to find audience? I don't know the answer.
Okay, I think that's a great question. As someone who was a theater producer for 10 years and shares many of your concerns about the marketplace, and as someone who experienced the 1984 Olympic Arts Festival directly, I believe that this is a fantastic opportunity to develop new audiences, to capture people's imaginations and get them out to things potentially that they would never even think about going to otherwise. I not only experienced the 1984 Olympic Arts Festival, which, as I'm sure you have heard from people, was this seminal turning point in arts and culture in the region. Heidi, were you here for that? You want to chime in on that at all? Or you're just nodding? Or you're mute? You're mute.
I was here for it, and we had our baby was born, and we went to every event that we could. Everyone was afraid of traffic. They they left the city in droves because it was going to be so horrendous, and it was fantastic. There was no traffic, and you could get a ticket to anything. The arts were amazing. It was one of the pillar moments of our city, and I was so proud. And it was just fabulous. We went to everything, and we took our little 3-month-old to all of it too. And Rauschenberg signed something for me, and I still have it on my wall.
Okay, and Ted was here too, and I know, Ted, you have to leave, but thank you very much for chiming in, and thank you for giving us your top 3 criteria. But then beyond that, I actually was also at the 2 subsequent Los Angeles festivals, one of which I had the pleasure of writing an op-ed piece about for the LA Times. And it was an exploration of our city that was a constant surprise in terms of unveiling new things for me. And I think that if we do this right, it won't be people just being in their same troughs, buying tickets to the same things that they're always seeing or doing. We will create an environment where they can really explore new things and have new experiences and radically widen their lens. But of course, that means we have to do it. We have to do it right. So no small task. So any other thoughts here about which elements you feel are the most important? The reason that we, by the way, have thematic alignment kind of separated at the top was because people voted on it in the Friday morning session, but then we didn't vote on it in the Friday afternoon session because it seemed to be such a given, right? If you weren't creating a project that was in some way inventing tradition, or reflecting on that in some way, then, if there was just no way that you could be part of it. So then it became, well, which of these other criteria were then the most important? But I leave it up to you guys. If you want to vote for it, fine. If you don't, you just want to select from the lower group, that's fine too. And Mito, did you have your hand up? Did I miss something?
I did have my hand up, actually. Thank you so much. No worries. So just to kind of add to having a lot of programming within the city, I mean, it's Los Angeles. I mean, it is such a vast territory of a place. in order for us to have events all over the city is great, because then a lot of us tend to silo in our own little communities and little bubbles sometimes, but want to be at the pulse of something or attend an event that is themed to the Olympics. So I feel like this would lend itself to that, and because we're able to do that. That's the first thing. Second thing is to add to the list. Is innovation something that we have put on the list, or is that on the list, or does it any of those pillars touch on innovation?
We intended for approach to also incorporate risk and innovation, but we can add it as a separate one if you feel it's important enough.
I think so.
Okay, let's add it. Sam.
Oh, I had one thought about long-term legacy. My impression of it speaks more towards the legacy that it would lend to the city itself rather than the artist's qualifications. So, and I recognize, Bella, that you shared that it was referring to both the artist and the city. For clarification, I feel like, well, I feel like it would really serve to the longevity of our community over the artist, if that makes sense.
Yeah. People have asked, is there going to be something of lasting value? The city has some interest in an element that would do that. Let's remember that when we call a piece of public art permanent, that means its lifespan is about 25 years. But people also refer to the Los Angeles festivals that happened twice after the 1984 Olympics Arts Festival is one of the legacies. There can be intangible legacies, as we know, right? Certainly an intangible legacy of the 1984 Olympics in general was the raising the bar for the Los Angeles cultural community in terms of its aspirations and what it wanted to accomplish, and seeing itself as a player, wanting to be a player in an international community. So I think it can mean a lot of things on a lot of levels.
That's great.
Okay, so Bella was putting in the new additional criteria, and
Helena's had her hand up for
oh,
quite some time.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see it. Helena.
Sorry, I'm driving. So I can't type in the chat to put in my three things, but I want to say community sustainability, and so when we're talking about legacy, does that also can that also refer to, like, if you start a community project in reference or because of the Olympics, but continuing after, so it's just not like a one and done thing, but to continue and now have that as a tradition. Does that go into the legacy part?
It could. It could.
Okay.
Did you want legacy to be your third?
Yeah, because I want to focus on projects that continue on, not just like, all right, we just did it for the Olympics. That was cool. Nah, we're not gonna probably do it again. I wanted something that it started because of the Olympics, but continued because it really inspired and brought people together.
Okay, so I see, thank you. So I see, Marcus, maybe you could put Helena's a 3 into the chat just so we have it on record in the chat. It was community, sustainability, and legacy. And if everybody else, other people have started to put theirs into the chat, if you could, if you haven't already done so, start doing that. And then we'll have a record of it. And while we're doing it, Jonathan?
While you're doing it, I'll share some thoughts. I'm excited by this list, and it really resonates with me. And I have some additional thoughts that are just ideas, just reactions. Artistic qualifications. I really resonate with artistic experience. I wonder if qualifications suggests a sense of supremacy or formality or experience that may not actually add value, but may be received in a unintended way by artists. And similarly, long-term legacy, I actually voted for that. I really, really like it. But I also have a similar wonder around long-term legacy. Is what we're trying to say something more related to impact? Long-term and legacy each suggest a sort of, in my brain, an organization or artist who's maybe been around a long time. And I just wonder if emerging and new artists would receive that language differently.
Interesting. Well, we've had a lot of back forth on that qualifications and experience. You know, on the one hand, right, you want to know that the project's going to happen. On the other hand, you want to give people with not that much experience a chance to fly. You know, in public art, that's happening more and more by pairing more experienced artists with less experienced artists in order to help them fulfill a vision. So maybe there's something there.
Maybe what we're
So would
talking about
you
is,
suggest a term change? You know, and what you said just made me realize long-term and legacy, they're kind of the same thing, aren't they, in a way? Or no, one's impact. What would you change it to?
I think that together, and I'm just spitballing with you, but there is maybe an accidental redundancy, and the sort of double impact of both terms, long-term and legacy, sort of suggest we might prioritize more established artists and organizations. And I wonder if it's long-term impact or something legacy. I don't know. There's something.
I like long-term impact.
So that's one thought. And then going back to qualifications, like I get what we're saying. Like as an artistic
Heidi
director,
likes it too. Yeah,
I
sorry, go ahead.
want the art on our stages to be really, really good, right? But I wonder if what we're talking about is viability, accountability. I just wonder about this. I mean, to be direct, I'm wondering if there's like a white supremacy characteristic and this idea of who's qualified to storytell.
Well, and also, you know, part of that problem is, you know, this is why so many people are dropping educational requirements from jobs. Does the job really need it, right? Is it is it really meaningful? I like what you said. I like what you just called it. It just went out of my brain. Viability.
Because if we don't have confidence in someone's ability to execute on the project, I mean, that's significant. But
Yeah.
that's different from qualification.
Heidi?
Long-term impact.
Long-term impact
I just
on
put
that one, but instead of artist qualifications and experience, how would you feel about project viability?
Not nearly as inspiring, but that's the idea. Doesn't
Well,
have that ring to
project
it.
viability could take into account not only who are the artists involved, right? What's the production history, right? But is there a realistic budget? You know, I
Well,
mean, do we know they're going to make it happen?
they're two separate issues. You know, one is, yes, they're both important, the artist qualifications and the project's viability. They're separate, I think.
So maybe experience and viability? Except experience, then it rules out newcomers. How are we going to give people some way to enter into this?
Well,
Can
can I jump in really quickly?
Yes,
I think we
please.
had a similar conversation either at one point on Friday, but in thinking about experience, I guess it depends on your definition of experience. Is your definition of experience they've been commissioned X amount of times by a private entity, a public entity, they have X amount of training, or is experience, they've been making work within their community or with their friends for 2 or 3 years and have a work sample that reflects their level of curiosity and interest and connection to what they're talking about. So it's beyond
Marcus is
just
going,
their
yes.
it's beyond just their experience as I am an experienced established artist and more of I am experienced in what I want to make and what I want to talk about with my project. Which I think we'll need to refine because we're not going to be able to explain all of that in the 3-word criteria, but I think the point is that language needs to be really refined so people know that is what we're looking for because I know there's plenty of applications that I've seen where that's not what people mean by experience.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful. Okay, so has everyone voted? Bella, you want to use your brain calculator and tell us what's risen to the top?
Yes, I have, and also just calling out Sam's message in the chat. I think it's also relates in talking about scale. Our
Yes.
top 3 overall, and I will put them in the chat, are community engagement and accessibility, diversity, and legacy, which I think we're going to turn to long-term impact.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So community engagement was at the top of both the Friday sessions, just so you know. It was just totally up there. People want to see things co-created. They want to see everything accessible. They want to see people stumble on it, as well as choose to go to it or participate in it. It's just huge for everyone. Obviously, honoring the diversity of our region in every way and across disciplines and is super important. But long-term impact, I don't think ranked very high on Friday, did it, in either session? And I think it ranked higher in one than the other. I don't know. I'd have to look back at my notes, but I don't think it was as important in those sessions as it was to you guys. So all of this is going to be kind of aggregated together in our report to the Arts and Culture Commission. And I'm so glad, Mito, that you're here. We had another Arts and Culture Commissioner who was at one of the sessions on Friday. We're going to be looking for the input from the commissioners on both the overall themes that came up in our discussions, so the first part of our discussion this evening, as well as how we should be thinking about this possible criteria, which will absolutely inform how the implementation plan gets put together, which is the next phase. So thank you. I can't believe, Bella, that you did that. That's so amazing.
Bella is amazing, as are you, Laura. Thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you.
much for leading us in this session. And thank you all for joining us. The conversation was just so good tonight. You never know on Zoom, and you all were really rock stars. So we appreciate that. We will keep you all informed of our next steps. So we have your contact information. Thank you so much for RSVPing, and feel free to reach out with questions at any time, and we'll be in touch.
Great.
This was super great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
And Laura, I just want to say, I think the theme is genius. So,
Yay!
Yay!
Thanks,
We
everybody.
love hearing that.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.